Welcome today to Stress, Money, and Bad Habits. We have tons of great resources and information to talk to you about today. So we're going to go relatively quickly. My name is Andrea Pellegrini, and I run the Student Money Management Center for the entire University of Illinois system. And I am joined today by my colleague, Carol. Carol, do you want to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Thanks, Andrea. My name is Carol Peterson. I am the Senior Director of the UIC Wellness Center. We are responsible for wellness and all those related issues on UIC's campuses. We also partner with our sister school in Rockford and Peoria.
Thank you so much, Carol. I've worked with Carol for a long time, but this is the first time we've gotten to co-present, so I'm very excited today. So as you may know from previous webinars, collectively the Get Savvy webinar team represents organizations across the state of Illinois, which rests on the ancestral lands of multiple Native nations, and we have a responsibility to acknowledge those nations and move forward with them towards a more inclusive and vibrant society. So we also have a poll, and again, they moved everything on me when they did the update, but I'm going to try to launch it quickly. This poll should give us some information about who's joining us today. So I just launched it. It asks some demographic information. It is, we're not going to share it publicly, right? It's all in aggregate, but this information helps our colleagues in the University of Illinois Extension who partner on the entire University Get Savvy, Grow Your Grin Stuff webinar series to maintain funding to do statewide outreach like what we are doing today. So all of the information that you provide there can really help us in maintaining free financial education for Illinois residents and University of Illinois system students, which is who I primarily serve. All right, thank you so much. We got a little over half of you that have participated. We have a broad age range joining us today. Lots of full-time employees, a few students as well, some retired folks as well as others, mostly women on today. And we have a wide distribution of different racial demographics. So thank you again for joining us. I'm going to just quickly share the results and you can kind of see who's joining us. Now stop sharing now. If it still is up, you can just exit out of that screen. So I'm going to hand it over to Carol to talk about our learning objectives.
Thanks, Andrea. So we're going to go through this pretty quickly, but we're also going to give you opportunities to join in and chat with us. So we're going to be discussing factors that contribute to stress. We're going to understand connection the stress has to unhealthy habits. We're going to identify ways to be aware of bad habits. And we're also going to review methods of recovery. And that's the important part. And so quickly, I just want to say, as we move through this, you're going to learn about behaviors and you might hear words like the word trauma and just, different behaviors. And I want to make sure that folks understand that, we want you to stay on. We want you to continue to listen because we're going to help that you learn. At the end, we're going to be sharing lists of referrals. And Andrea's put together this wonderful resource list for you. So stay tuned with us, but also just be aware that you may at times feel a little bit uncomfortable, but if you can hang with us to the end, we're going to talk about recovery. So I want to acknowledge that as we're talking about bad habits, I'm even going to redefine that, but as we're talking about bad habits, I want to acknowledge that we as human beings are very resilient and that when we are in situations that are challenging, we survive, we find ways to survive. And so right now, I want to acknowledge that, the pandemic happened just 4 years ago, but for some of us, it may feel like yesterday. We still see signs of folks being really stressed out, lonely and jealous and feelings of helplessness and hopelessness and powerlessness. So if you're feeling any of this, you're not alone and you're very much normal. So we just need to make the declarative statement that Americans are stressed. And so we also need to acknowledge that, we being in the post-COVID, that some of those COVID blues that were with us 4 years ago, they're still with us today. And so we're still in the shadow of these emotions. So we're still feeling frustrated and stressed and depressed and overwhelmed. Some of these have not left us. So we're challenged on both ends. So I want to talk a little bit about identifying bad counterproductive habits. So usually folks will talk about You know, you've got a good habit, you've got a bad habit. I don't like to use that word bad, so we're going to try to use the word counterproductive. Because really, as we move through this presentation, you're going to see that a habit is something that we're picking up and that we're doing as a way to take care of ourselves. It's counterproductive when they're bad habits because often what they're leading to is the opposite of what we're hoping to achieve. So we're going to do our first chat. So just, you know, we got to know each other a little bit. So what are some of the common bad habits or counterproductive habits used to relieve stress? If you could throw some of your favorites into the chat, that would be awesome. If you don't want to reveal yourself, then just share the bad habits or counterproductive habits of those that you know of by friends and family.
All right, we got a lot going on in the chat. Eating junk food, overspending, snacking, overeating, shopping, going out to eat, eating, smoking. I really identify with the eating.
We all do.
All right, continue to sharing if you want. If you don't feel comfortable sharing, don't bother. You don't need to. This is a safe space, including not sharing.
Absolutely. And so everything that you guys put in the chat is fantastic. We're going to be talking about some of those and drilling down. But before we talk about, like, you know, bad habits, I want to acknowledge that there are some reported decreases of use of among college students. So statistics are showing that they're smoking less, they're vaping less, they're drinking less. There's less use of non-medical of amphetamines amphetamines such as Adderall. There's also less use of opiates. And so we need to like acknowledge that and say that and so celebrate that as well. And then we'll go into talking about where the increases are occurring. So what we're seeing, the increases in some of the counterproductive habits that we're seeing amongst college students we're seeing a prevalence in wagering. So there's more gambling on college campuses. And it's not just, you know, non-college folks, it's actually students. So a 2023 National Collegiate Athletic Association survey showed that 58% of 18 to 22-year-old students were actively engaging in sports betting. There was even a quote by a student making the point that from his perspective, you know, betting was, you had to spend more and bet more in order to make more. So this is a different kind of thinking and behavior that's going on here. We have an increase of marijuana use. So it's interesting that in 2020, marijuana or cannabis was legalized in Illinois, and we saw increases around the country in marijuana use. We still have active marijuana use happening on our college campuses. We have a prevalence of social media use. I like this. I wanted to share this with you because this is a really great graph. What we're looking at real quick is that if you're seeing like 1 to 5 hours, so the total population was about 24,000 students. So for 1 to 5 hours, about 40% were saying that that's how much time they're spending using social media. Then we look at about 30% were using social media for about 6 to 10 hours, and typically a week, so 7 days. So what we're seeing is like really what I consider to be really solidly high rates of social media use. And as you guys know, the more that you use social media, they show that there's also an increase in depression and there's increase in episodes of jealousy. We're also seeing a prevalence of doom scrolling. So doom scrolling is endlessly scrolling through social media or news feeds or videos. It's endlessly looking at things that are tragic, that are sad, that are headlines, that are that really just, you know, are troubling. And so we're doing that. The folks who are doing that at extended periods of time. So for long periods of time, so much length of time that they actually lose track of time. What research is showing is that the folks who are doing this are individuals who are feeling anxious. And so this doom scrolling is their way or their perceived way of gaining control of the anxiety of the situation that's going on in the world. It's almost like by looking through everything, they're hoping to get control of it, over it and feel a little bit better about it. But the result is that you have increased anxiety and decreased mood. So this is literally where those counterproductive habits come in.
So Carol's done a really good job of highlighting all these contributing factors to stress and the relationship between stress and money can be really cyclical. So stress can cause you to make poor financial decisions, which can lead to decision fatigue, especially with people in lower income groups or have less resources. If you engage in retail therapy to cope with your stress and it causes you to take on debt or delay other financial goals, it creates more financial stress, which then compounds the problem. Maybe initially you chose a coping mechanism that was as a result of outside stress, and then it becomes financial stress because of the costs of that activity. So if you're engaging in other non-productive habits in excess, it can also delay reaching financial goals or increase basic needs insecurity and economic vulnerability, which also leads again to financial stress. So you can see this relationship between stress and money and how it can be cyclical and have compounding impacts on both your ability to navigate day-to-day financial choices as well as build wealth over time or navigate dealing with debt.
Okay, thanks, Andrea. So we're going to talk about stress and burnout. Okay, so we have this definition, which I like. This is not an official definition. This is something that I wrote. This is after me looking at a lot of definitions. So let's boil it down to what is stress. It literally is having too much to do, too much stimulus, too many problems, too many people, too many hurdles to jump, too many tasks, too much homework, too many fires to put out. And this is where the stress part comes in, is we have all of these things to do and we want to do it all well. And that's why we're stressed out. And so I'm also wanted to look at stress in terms of workplace stress. So with workplace stress as being defined as the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, they're defining it as harmful physical and emotional responses that occur when the requirements of the job do not match, and this is important, do not match the capabilities, the resources, or the needs of the worker. So we are experiencing work stress when we're in situations where we don't feel supported, where we're not supported by enough coworkers, where we're not supported by enough resources to do our job, where we might be in a situation where we work for an institution or being asked to do something that doesn't match our values. All of those things can lead to workplace stress. So we want to make sure before we move much more forward that you understand that stress is not a mental illness, that is actually a really critically important part of having good mental illness. And so again, to be stressed is to be normal. It is to be human, even as to be even non-human. Animals are even stressed. So we just need to realize that it's normal and to some extent embrace that rather than trying to run away from it or trying to create a life that's stress-free. As you guys know, like stress is from A to Z on both ends of life. So looking at stress in America, we've got this statistic that showed us that about 80% of workers feel stress on the job, and that about 25% of workers have felt like screaming or shouting because of job stress. So if you've ever felt like that, during a meeting, during somebody gave you this project or just whatever, if you have ever felt that way, repeat to yourself, I am normal. It's because it's, again, you're feeling overwhelmed. And so in fact, we're going to talk about what that means to be overwhelmed in a chronic state. So we're going to look at stress for college students. This is really critical. I love this. This is a Gallup poll that was done in, what are we showing? In 2023, I think, showing. So here's what's great. So if you look at the first line, it shows that on average, every day, college students are saying that they're on, like about 75%, 76%, that they do feel like enjoyment or they have an emotion of enjoyment every day. So 76% are saying that. But let's look at what's below that. Stress, worry, loneliness, sadness, anger. Look at those numbers that are occurring every day and in terms of feelings of emotion, add those up. So if you look at that, it's a very, we're feeling anxiety and types of different anxiety every day, coupled with enjoyment, but really overwhelmed and weighed down by all these other stressors that we're thinking about and dealing with every day. And this is really critical for you guys to remember this slide, because we're going to talk about that in a few slides to come. So burnout, I talked about being overwhelmed. Like, when you're stressed out, you've got all that to do, and you get to a point, that you're stressed, and the part of that stress is because we're trying to do it all well. We want to do that report well. We want to write that really good email. We want to do that project well. We want to run this committee well. And in trying to do that, you're also dealing with all the hurdles that get in the way of it. So burnout is a physical, emotional, mental exhaustion accompanied by decreased motivation, lowered performance, and negative attitudes towards oneself and others. And this is really the crux of it. It results from performing at a high level of extreme and prolonged physical or mental exertion. So it is equivalent to being on that wheel or that treadmill, and you're running and you're running and you're running and you're trying to do the best that you can, but you don't feel yourself getting closer to your goal and you keep getting pushed back. So let's take a moment and I'm just going to read these out loud, and I want to kind of have you internally think about what you're feeling like. So burnout feels like this. Again, you don't have to answer it out loud. You don't have to put in a poll, just answer to yourself. So you question the value of the work. You drag yourself to work and you have trouble getting started. You feel removed from your work and the people you work with. You lose patience with coworkers or customers or clients. You lack emotional or physical energy to do the job well. Or you find it hard to focus on the job. Are you using food, drugs, alcohol, or any other counterproductive habit to feel better or to numb how you feel? So this is burnout. This is what burnout feels like. And really a nice way to just really wrap this up is that get so burned out, we get so overwhelmed that we find it hard to care. We no longer have the energy to put the care into the work that we used to have that energy and that level of care. So if you're feeling like this is what burnout feels like. So we have our increasing workload, which is this great scale shows us that all employees were identifying that they felt an increasing workload up to 21% or 27% or 28%, depending on who they were talking to. So if you're feeling like your workload is getting higher, it is. So let's confirm that it is getting higher. So much so that I wanted to share this with you. In the Guardian, January 2024, a top executive at Goldman Sachs sued the company for $1 million for over excessive workload. His claim said that they were the ones, or this job was the one that caused him to have heart problems, depression, and actually lead to thoughts of suicide. So they sued him. There might be other lawsuits that are similar to this out there, but this is one of the first that I've seen for $1 million. So I'm not suggesting you do this, but I am showing you this to show that you're not alone and that folks are suing their bosses. So Harvard Business Review did this great study also. They looked at managers and what managers were feeling during the pandemic or a little bit after the pandemic. 50% of managers were burned out. During the pandemic, and I'm sure a lot of you were managers or are managing during the pandemic. Even if you weren't managing a business or a department, you were managing your family or yourself. So you rose to the occasion, you gave empathy and sympathy to everybody. You did everything that needed to be done, meeting demands, meeting fears, reassuring, regardless of the fact that there's probably fewer resources. But what happened for managers is that there was very little recognition from the institutions that they worked with for all that they had done well. And then at the end of it, they were tired. They had given so much. And so, yes, that was 4 years ago, maybe ending in 2022. But if that fatigue and that burnout is still there, that makes sense. That's a part of being burned out. It can take time to recover, especially if there no active recovery is being sought out. So we're going to talk about stress and spending. So one of the things we want to first point out is that expenses have increased while our income has not kept up. So again, our expenses have increased, but our income hasn't kept up. In fact, there was a statistic that said that the amount of groceries that you're buying in 2024 is 20% higher the amount of groceries that you're buying in 2020. So I'm finding this, and I don't want to make assumptions, but I believe that you're finding this too, that when you're going to the checkout line and you're checked out and you're getting sticker shock at the amount of money that you're spending. And so costs are going up exponentially, but our salaries and our wages are not. And so it creates this struggle of stress, which is what Andrea was alluding to. And when you're stressed out, there's things that you have to do. Nope, you can go for the next one. So one of the things we talked about earlier was doom scrolling. So now what we're going to talk about is doom spending. So we talked about stress. We talked about the fact that more money, that things are costing more, our money is buying less and things are going up. So we're going to talk about doom spending, right? You got doom scrolling, now doom spending. So what is it? So doom spending is when we're spending money to counter concerns about the economy, about what's happening in the world. So despite those things, or because of those things, we are spending more money. So often the individual does not have the money to support these purchases to begin with, but yet they're out there spending money. So 20%, according to this poll by Karma, 27% of Americans are doom spending. 35% are Gen Z, 43% are millennials. And again, doom spending is when we are, we're out there, we're seeing that what's going on in life, and we're feeling the effects of that. We're feeling depressed by that. We're having an emotional reaction to that. And the result of that is we're spending, and we're spending. So we're going to move forward. We're going to look at some quotes. So Americans are doom spending. Here's why that's a problem. So rather than cut expenses, 73% of Gen Zers say they would rather live in the moment. So this is a critical, different mindset, right? We've had throughout our history, we've had different mindsets. During the Depression, it was you don't have money, you hold on to it. Now we're saying we don't have money, but we're going to spend it because life is short. And what we're seeing in this quote is that we have folks who, survived the pandemic, who saw that life could be short, who developed a way of managing some of the trauma and fear that was in the pandemic by spending. And now in 2023, they're saying, you know what? I'm going to live in the moment because I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So I'd rather be in debt than not have it.
And so I'm to add to Carol's really valuable point with that last quote is it's great to live in the moment, but you also have to think about what other additional risks that your stress spending might have. So when we engage in doom spending or retail therapy or stress shopping, to cope with stress, it can have those additional risks. So like we talked about earlier, stress and finances have that cyclical relationship because increased spending can lead to increased debt and lower savings rate. On top of that, inflation, as we've kind of mentioned, has been high recently, meaning increased costs both to survive as well as engage in stress spending. So if you are engaging in eating out more because that's how you're coping with stress, the cost of eating out has exponentially gone up over the past few years because of inflation. So it costs more to even engage in those coping mechanisms, those coping habits. Currently, credit card debt is over $1 trillion and saving rates have declined since peak pandemic in 2020 when it actually hit a record high. That increased debt can delay you reaching financial goals, and the lower savings rate makes being prepared for emergencies a lot more difficult. So it's a lot harder to make sure that you have enough to cover a surprise expense. For example, only 63% of 18 to 64-year-old Americans surveyed could cover a $400 surprise expense without borrowing or selling something that they own, according to the Federal Reserve. They do this poll pretty frequently, and the amount of 18 to 64-year-old Americans that are reporting they could cover a $400 surprise expense has gone up, but it went down post-pandemic compared to what it was, in 2020, surprisingly, with all the economic hardships a lot of people were going through. And for the most economically vulnerable people, increased spending and lower savings rate can have much more extreme risks, like increased food insecurity, increased housing insecurity, increased risks to your health. So there's all these contributing factors and additional risks that we wanted to highlight here when you're trying to find a way to responsibly deal with stress that doesn't impact your future negatively. So I'm going to hand it back to Carol.
Thanks, Andrea. So just in support of what Andrea just pointed out, so we've got another headline: doom spending takes hold among younger consumers. So more than half of those who were surveyed said that they were living paycheck to paycheck, and nearly 1/3 said that their debt had increased in the last 6 months. And so this is a new way of living, that, there's more emphasis on what you're buying and less emphasis on saving for the future, because folks don't really believe there's a future. So let's keep going. So here's a quote from a doom spender: "With inflation and the cost of living increasing, it makes me wonder where our world is heading. I know it won't get better, and I would rather live it up and spend money as opposed to saving." So this is a completely different mindset than what we're used to. But again, this is what I'm talking about. Like these individuals, so the person quoted is age 25. So this person was 21 or 20 during the pandemic. And so this individual saw what the world was going through, what our nation was going through. And so at that point in time, or even after that, they decided, you know what? Life is short, so I'm going to live it this way. And so like literally they're saying again, I don't know. I know it won't get better. Like that's a major statement. I know it won't get better. So that person really is fixated on the present. So we're going to do a poll. And so the poll is, what are we seeing in the comments of people engaging in doom spending? So what are we seeing in the comments of people engaging in doom spending?
I just launched the poll. So the couple of options is need for better budgeting. You're seeing this reflects a need for emotional fulfillment. Maybe it's both of the above, or maybe there's something else that you're getting from some of these quotes. It looks like we have about 34% of people have participated so far. And it's kind of across the board. No others yet. I'm surprised about that. But it looks like some of you are focused on the need for better budgeting. Some of you are focused on it reflects a need for emotional fulfillment. And the rest of you are saying it's all of the above. So in the interest of time, I'm going to end the poll and share the results real quick. You can kind of see how everybody responded. About half of you that responded said it's all of the above. And I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing so Carol can continue to talk about all the amazing ways we can focus on dealing with stress and spending. So again, if the window's still open for you, you can just exit out of it. All right, Carol.
Thank you. And you guys, thank you for participating in the poll. I appreciate that. So researchers shown, so we're going to talk about revenge spending. So I came across this article that looked at the pandemic through the lens of scientists in South Korea. And they were seeing, just like we were seeing, lots of spending going on. They talked about, what we're calling doom spending, they called it revenge spending. And what we're seeing is, so that research showed, is that people experience negative emotions during unforeseen and uncontrolled circumstances, such as the current COVID-19 pandemic, which causes them to shop to mitigate these adverse feelings. So they went on to talk about, like, even during hurricanes, folks are out spending. And even during the course of a hurricane, you've got some folks spending to buy supplies that are needed. And you've actually got some folks out during the hurricane buying luxury items. And so what they did is they looked at respondents and they looked to see how mood may have affected what you were doing and why you were doing it. So the folks who are angry, indifferent, depressed, or anxious, they shop for luxury items in order to socialize. So shopping was their way of gathering with friends and family and buying something beautiful that was going to help elevate their mood. The respondents who were indifferent, depressed, or anxious also shopped for luxury items, but that was, again, to elevate their mood more so than socialization. It literally was them just taking care of themselves and moving from one level of mood to the next higher level. So here's another great quote that actually kind of supports what we just talked about. So the economy sucks. There's global warming. There's constant political and social unrest globally. One 24-year-old told Bloomberg News, justifying her purchase of the occasional little luxury, like the vintage Chanel bag she picked up for $2,500. Again, $2,500. So we need to recognize, first of all, this is an outlier. This is not normal. This is not your typical 24-year-old. But the point is it relates back to the concept we just talked about, revenge spending, where folks are out there buying luxury items to make themselves feel better, to elevate their mood. And really, as you're going to see as we go forward, it doesn't last very long. You know, it elevates that mood for that moment, for that little bit of time. And then over time, it decreases, and then you have to, you have to buy that next luxury item. So, so your potential goals of doom spending. So this is, I want you guys to be conscious of this. So we might be hearing people say things like, oh, I want to live my best life. I'm living in the moment, like what we just did, but I want to live my best life. And so you see them out spending, sending them doom spending in whatever capacity that is. But really, what they also might be trying to do is they're trying to get a sense of control. They're trying to not feel left out, which is compensatory consumerism, which we'll talk about in a second. They're trying to increase their self-esteem. Oops. They're trying to increase their self-esteem, their socialization, and win peer competitions. They're trying to increase feelings of happiness, decrease fear, pain, anxiety, uncertainty. They're trying to provide self-medication. And I really want to stress this. If we're shopping to elevate our mood or doing any other counterproductive behavior or habit, that's self-medication. We recognize that we're not feeling well, and we're trying to figure out what do we need to do to feel better. And we reach for the thing that is closest to us and the easiest thing to do and get. And so we're doing these things to soothe ourselves, to heal and recover. So yes, people are saying, I want to live my best life, but also what they're trying to do is, I want to feel better. So we're going to talk about trauma, and we're not talking about trauma in like this really heavy sense, like, oh, we all, like there's a major problem. I just want to acknowledge, just like we have stress, there's enough going on in our world where we're all feeling some level of trauma, looking at trauma on a continuum. So we're going to talk about what some of those contributing factors is. So first, we're going to define what is trauma. So individual trauma results from an event, series of events, or a set of circumstances that it is experienced by an individual as physically or emotionally harmful or life-threatening, and it has lasting adverse effects on the individual's functioning, their mental, physical, social, emotional, or spiritual well-being. That is trauma. In a nutshell, something happens, something bad happens. It could be something that is acute and that there was just one bad incident, or it could be chronic over weeks, over days, weeks, or months, or years. So it differs for individuals. And even the impact of a bad event or crisis affects individuals differently. Some folks, they're immediately going to bounce back from it. Other folks, it's going to take a little bit of time. But we need to recognize that the world and our lives are filled with different levels of trauma. So there's three parts of trauma. You have the event, you have the experience, and you have the effect. So on the left-hand side, and again, this is a short list. The event of trauma could be, 100 bullets long, but we're just focusing on these for now. So a pandemic, a war, the economy, the climate, right? Which are some of the things that are doom shoppers mentioned. The experience from that is our fear, our anxiety, our fear of shortages, the death and the grief that comes with that, Unemployment, because oftentimes in times of crisis, we see jobs being cut. And so if jobs are being cut, then how do we survive? And there's fear there. Supply chains are being interrupted. And that was definitely something that happened in the pandemic. Goods and goods were not able to get to our country. So then we saw prices going up, and they have stayed up. And also loss of control, helplessness, all of those things that we saw in that first slide that talked about that we are stressed are some of the experiences of the events of trauma. So we look at what is that effect? How does it affect us? So emotionally, again, stress, worry, fear, anger, helplessness, and grief. Behaviorally, and this is where we're doing some of our self-medicating, we might be gambling, we might be doing, having stranger sex, we might be shopping. We're doing the things that are trying to make us feel better. So let's look at our next slide. So we have emotional regulation. So when we're doing these things, and we're going to talk more about the things, when we're doing these things, what we're trying to do is regulate our emotions. So we have we have a baseline, right? So my baseline is I normally feel, pretty good, this is where I'm at. So you have that baseline, but then an event occurs, that event occurs either acutely where it's just one incident or it's multiple events for over a length of time. Then what starts to happen is we want to get back to that baseline. We want to get back to that feeling that we used to have prior to the event, or we just simply want to feel better, to soothe and heal and comfort ourselves. And that's why we're doing some of the counterproductive habits that you see us doing, because we're trying to self-medicate. We're trying to get back to our baseline. We're just trying to feel better, and we're trying to find ways to recover. Unfortunately, though, the very thing that we choose to do to make ourselves feel better is often the thing that's not the best to do. So where does that lead us? So some of your emotional regulation and action. So these are some of the things that we're doing to try to get back to baseline. So we're self-medicating, possibly through substance abuse. We're doing high risk or self-injurious behaviors. We're eating too much or we're eating too little. We might have too much emotions or not enough, or we're repressing it, or we're denying the existence of our emotions, and we're walking around feeling emotionally stunted and numb, or we might be leading to compulsive behaviors, which is the gambling and the shopping and the substance use, all of those things. But again, all of these things we do to make ourselves feel better. And so we get caught in this cycle, and we don't even realize that the thing that we're doing is also the thing that's hurting us. We're going to talk more about that. So compensatory consumption. So basically compensatory consumption is that we are aiming at coping with a psychological deficit or threat. And again, that threat can be a national or a natural disaster. So that could be war, that could be a hurricane, that could be a pandemic. We're trying to figure out ways to meet and compensate for that deficit, or soothe us for that threat. And so you can also look at it from a different consumer behavior, just like consumer shopping. So compensatory consumption, it can also be that, I want to buy this to feel better about myself, or I want to buy this so that I win the competition of who's got the best of this or the best of that. And so those things could be, I don't feel good about myself, so I need to go buy this something to make me feel good about myself, and to elevate, at least in my head, elevate my status in my circle of friends, in my family, or in my community. So it's using consumption to fill deficits, whether it's a psychological deficit or a physical threat. So what we're going to do is, the question here is, why am I doing this, right? We've talked a little bit about the why. So we're shopping, we're eating, we're having sex with strangers, we're just doing whatever, we're drinking. But why am I doing this? We're going to talk about stress in our brain. So I want you to know we are hardwired to worry. And I'm going to say it again. We are hardwired to worry. Our brain is a worry machine. It literally is. So in 2005, the National Science Foundation published an article regarding research about human thoughts per day. So what they saw is that the average person had about 12,000 to 60,000 thoughts per day. And about 80% of those are negative. Of those 80%, 95% are exactly the same repetitive thought as the day before. So think about it. When you go through your day, how often do we have that same negative thought? You walk through that same path, turn that building, see that person, whatever that stimulus is, you think the same negative thought about that person, that situation, that whatever, every day. That affects your mood, that affects your perspective, so all of those negative thoughts are weighing down on you. So looking at the quantity of thoughts, whether you're having 12 to 60,000 thoughts, if 80% of those thoughts are negative, those are also negatively affecting your mood. And a lot of times we are surrounded by thoughts regarding situations that we can't change, that we can't control. And so we're having this negative thought about the situation, and I can't control it, and I can't control it, but it's stressing me out. All of those things negatively affect our mood. And so thinking back to the slide where you saw the college students and asked, like, what are your emotions and thoughts? Your daily emotions, and we saw worry, and we saw loneliness, and we saw anger, and we saw sadness. So these are things that are happening to them quite possibly every day. So we feel overwhelmed by our thoughts. So we'll go to our next slide. So we're going to understand our brain waves. And so one, we just learned we have a ton of thoughts, and 80% of those thoughts are negative. Two, we're going to look at our brain waves, right? So we're going to use this as an example of a tool for you to remember as you work on your recovery. So you have an alpha wave, which is calm. So your alpha wave is one of your slower waves, right? You achieve an alpha wave when you're meditating, or when you're praying, or when you're doing yoga. It's a calm, creative, peaceful wave, very slow, very gentle. You have a beta wave. Your beta wave occurs when your eyes are open and you're thinking and you're engaged. So right now you guys are definitely having a beta wave. You have three types of beta waves, right? So I want you to envision sort of a bell curve. So on the left-hand side of that bell curve, you've got a low beta wave, 12 to 15 hertz. So your thoughts are quiet, they're focused, they're creative, they're clear thinking. You're doing good there, right? It's a great place to be. So you also have your mid-range beta wave, 15 to 20 hertz. You've got good energy, you've got good performance, and you might have a little bit of anxiety, but it's that healthy anxiety. It's the kind of anxiety that motivates you to perform well. Then you've got your high range beta wave, which is 22 to 38 hertz. In this range, this is where we have significant stress, anxiety, fear, paranoia, racing thoughts, anger, aggression, impulsiveness, and sometimes suicide. And a way for me to help you to understand like how fast, like we're going to look at the really fast part, 38 hertz. So hertz can also be described in CPS, which is cycles per second. So when you think about cycles per second, your brain is moving, the waves are moving at 38 brain waves per second. So 38 waves in 1 second. And so that's painful. That's when you see people clutching and grabbing their head and saying, my brain hurts. And so that's where we're at. And when you're in that place, it's hard to make decisions. So let's go to our next slide. So if you have a stressed brain, that stressed brain is ruled by your amygdala. And you see that little dot, that little red dot, that is your amygdala. That is about the size of a walnut. And your amygdala rules, the acronym is FAST. So fear, anxiety, stress, and threat is what your amygdala rules, right? It records those incidents of trauma and fear and reminds you of them. When you're in a state where your amygdala is like in charge and ruling your brain, again, you're scared, you're stressed, you're feeling threatened, that's when your amygdala activates. When you're in that state of fear, stress, anxiety, or threat, you can't make good decisions. You've lost your capacity to make a good judgment. You have problems, you have difficulty problem solving. You have irrational thinking, you have impaired thinking and panic thinking. And it also, during this state, it negatively affects your ability to learn, remember, encode, and retrieve and apply information. So for your students who are attending, we're in exams, make sure that when you're going into that exam that you are as calm as you can be, taking lavender oil with you, because if you're stressed and in that exam, your brain won't be able to retrieve the information that I know that you know. So make sure you do all that you can to calm down your brain. So this is our stress brain. So let's look at our calm brain. So our calm brain is ruled by our prefrontal cortex, which is what the highlighted area that you see. So the prefrontal cortex is in charge of like organizing. It's our executive decision making capacities are in this area, and so when we're calm, your prefrontal cortex is activated, right? When you're calm and it's activated, you're able to plan and organize. You're able to do calm and clear thinking. You're able to be solution focused. You're able to remember, retrieve, and apply information, which is why when you're taking that class or even a meeting with having a difficult meeting with a boss or employee or just whatever, when you're calm, you're able to say what you need to say in the best possible way. And you're also going to make your best decision making judgment. So what's happening when we're shopping and we're doing some of these counterproductive behaviors, we're using our stress brain because we're stressed. We're using our stress brain to say, hey, it's a good idea to reach back out and go do this thing that I know, in the long run, it's not good. But in that moment, oh boy, it feels great. It's our stress brain guiding us and leading us. And again, it's our goal of soothing ourselves. So let's look at our next slide. So when we engage in these bad behaviors or these counterproductive behaviors, we're really trying to find relief and reward and calm and recovery. We're literally trying to slow down our beta waves, that high, fast, super fast beta wave that's on the end of the bell curve, the bad end of the bell curve. We're trying to slow that beta wave down. We're trying to get back to our baseline. We're trying to get back to a point where we feel comfortable and happy in our bodies and in our heads. So we're going to talk about some counterproductive habits. We're going to talk a little bit more about those. So what influences us, right? So we've talked about, something happens. We've talked about that our brain, that we're thinking 12 to 60,000 thoughts a day, 80% of which are negative. And so, so that definitely is influencing us. Like I said, with trauma, we're trying to get back to the baseline of feeling good. But we also have tons of other stimulus coming at us. So on the left side, you see the internal triggers that are influencing us. And on the right-hand side, you see the external things that are influencing us. We've got peer pressure, we've got advertising, we've got marketing. And so what I want to do is I want to focus a little bit on the marketing and advertising that's coming at us, because this is a major, major life influence that we are actually acting on, and folks are aware of it. Companies are aware of it. Big data folks are aware of it, and they're writing algorithms to make sure that we stay on track with what they want us to do. So let's look at that. So promoting overspending. So again, we're stressed, we got stuff going on, so we're leading ourselves into these behaviors. But, and this is where you can give yourself, some permission to forgive yourself. We're also being led and promoted to overspend. So this quote, so persuasion is no longer just an art, it's an out and out science. Indeed, it's a vast body of scientific evidence that now exists on how, when, and why people say yes to influence attempts. So what's happening is we've got so much stimulus coming at us, and everything has been, I don't even know how to say it. Everything that they have coming at us have, there's been clinical data and research on it, focus groups on it, millions of dollars in R&D on it. So when you see things like that say free or exclusive or limited time only, those are triggers that they know are going to activate you to spend. When they say eco-friendly, they know that for those folks who are eco-friendly and want to be good to the world, that they're more than likely going to make that purchase. They have targeting ads, they have algorithms, like I said, they have AI that follows you, they have cookies that follow you, which you guys know. They're doing everything that they can do to get into your wallet and to have you spend. And we have to realize that we're being assaulted by this constantly. Whether you're on the net, whether you're on your phone, whether you are even just looking at the news, a news media feed, you're getting advertisements. And depending on who you are, you might be distracted by that and pop into that. So my point is we need to forgive ourselves, realizing that this is happening. And then once you raise that awareness, get some control over it. So we have to question others' motivation. So it's the marketers, the advertisers, the influencers, consumer psychologists. So these are folks who specifically spend all day, every day, trying to understand how we tick as an animal. I'm truly using that word, as an animal, and what bell can they ring to make us shop, or what bell can they ring to make us, buy food. So food scientists, there's this great book called Fat, Sugar, oh, uh, we'll send it to you. Fat, Sugar, and Salt. And basically, this whole book talks about the role of food scientists in terms of making us want to eat more and more and more. What they've done with our food is look for chemicals and chemical combinations that go straight to your brain and have your brain do that aha moment. So thanks, food scientists. So that's what they're doing. They're looking for that, and we're reacting to that. So when you're reaching for that bag of chips that you absolutely love, it might not be that you love it or that they designed it for you to love. They also are doing something in commercials that I'm going to call it food pornography. Yes, I said it, food pornography. I was standing in line at Dunkin' Donuts, and it's when they show you food or something, or even clothing, or even a phone, but in this sensuous, slow motion way, right? Where everything that you're seeing just looks like you just want to reach out and grab it and touch it or eat it. So they're doing these things on purpose, and they're very aware of the consequences of our actions because we buy the item. All right, next. So what happens is when we're stressed out, we get ourselves into a habit loop. So we have the trigger, the action, and the reward. In the middle is your habit. It is that wheel. So you have a stressor that occurs, which is your trigger. Then if it's a sad thing, if it's something that's made us sad or angry or anxious, we look for something to make us feel better. Because remember, we want to go back to that baseline of where we want to feel good. So then we find an action because we're human. We're going to reach for that thing that's in our environment. So it's food. So it's drinking. So it might be marijuana. So it's shopping. So it might be gambling, any of those things that are going to make us feel better. And then you grab that action, you do that action, and then you get that reward from that action. Your brain chemicals slow down or elevate or whatever it is that we're trying to do, that reward occurs. So what happens is over time, especially if we're having these triggers constantly occur and we're constantly reaching for this behavior to get the reward, we then find ourselves in this habit loop where what we're doing is almost just as bad as what is happening to us. And so the way that we break the habit loop is by me telling you this. The fact that you now know about this habit loop means that next time there's a trigger, and next time you're reaching for that thing, that counterproductive behavior that makes you feel better, you are going to recognize that you don't need to grab it, or you can grab something else, something that is productive, that's going to help you heal, but also help you get through that stressful moment. So many of us need help. The survey says that 50% of survey respondents said that they need help in learning how to manage stress. So we're going to do that now. We're going to talk about that. So managing emotional turmoil. So number one, right? Seek productive habits for self-care. So we've been doing the counterproductive. So let's intentionally look for what we can do that makes us feel good in a healthy way, that we're promoting our health versus, counteracting it. So we're looking for things to recharge, refresh, prevent, and heal. So number one, I want to encourage you to take control. Everything in this workshop is information that's going to help you raise your awareness and help you take control of the situation. So now you know you're being influenced, and there's things out there that are trying to manipulate your emotions and your actions. So next time you see it or feel it, take control of yourself. Intentionally choose new, meaningful, enjoyable, and productive habits. Like concretely acknowledge your stress trigger habit, your habit that is going on. And all of those things are going to eventually lead to you getting control of your habit. You're going to find that healthy way to manage it, because we do need to manage it. We do need to manage the stress. We do need to manage the trauma. So we're not saying stop doing anything good. We're just saying find something better. And setting limits. So we're not even saying shopping. So I'm just going to confess to you guys, I love to shop. I'm, addicted to Amazon, right? Like, especially during the pandemic, like so many other folks. So for you people, for you folks who identified as being shopping, I'm right there with you. But what I've had to do is like set limits. And that's what we're talking about here. Regardless of what you're doing or how you're doing it, recognize you're doing it, recognize why you're doing it, and then set limits on that thing, on whatever that counterproductive habit is. So creating a spending plan and tracking it. Like if you are shopping, say to yourself, you know what, I'm going to load the cart up for a month. And then on whatever date that is, I'm going to go into the cart, delete as much stuff as I absolutely can, because now I no longer have an emotional attachment to it. And then I'm going to buy it. So instead of doing purchases once a week, twice a week, or multiple times a week, you're doing it once a month. Because it's been sitting there for so long, you're less attached to it. And then setting alerts. Like if you find that set an alert that your credit card is going up, set an alert that you're spending, that your savings are going down. Those things are going to help keep you attuned to what's going on. Become positively assertive. I love this part because, again, I want to give you back power, right? We've had, some trauma, we've had national disasters, we've had economic disasters and crisis. We've got folks who feel like they can only live in the moment. Well, I want you to feel that you do have control, you do have power, and you can make yourself feel better. And a part of that is just educating yourself. Again, just being on this conference means that you now have information. And so you can move positively forward. So doing that is going to lead to hopefully, and give yourself time because it's not going to happen overnight, but hopefully more productive actions. So mindfulness. So I know people talk about mindfulness all the time, and so much so that it loses its power. But I really want to promote it again. And I apologize, but I need to say this because we live in a world that is so fast paced that we are rushing from A to Z from the moment we get up to the moment that we go to bed. And we don't allow ourselves a moment to process. So we don't allow ourselves a moment to process the stress. So I want to say, take that moment. And I'm going to say, what does that look like? So for those of you, all you guys are busy. When you transition from one task to the next, one meeting to the next, one classroom to the next, one conversation to the next, one task to the next, I want you to take a moment, take a deep breath, and just say, you know what? I finished that. Take a deep breath, and I'm going to start this. Take a deep breath and take that moment to check in with yourself. Do I need to eat? Do I need to go to the bathroom, or can I continue? Okay. Consciously, acknowledging that you're changing tasks, being more mindful of what you're doing, is what's going to happen is that you're not going to lose information, in the sense that sometimes you get to the end of the day and you don't even know what you did. So being mindful is going to protect you from that. I want to strongly, strongly encourage you to meditate. And the reason why is, again, we hear the word meditating all the time. The thing about meditating is that it does more than just make you feel better. Like, yes, it reduces negative emotion, it increases self-compassion, it increases patience, it does all those wonderful things, it reduces stress, and it helps turn chaos into calm. But this is what meditation does. There is a Harvard review, and we've dropped it into the chat for you. Harvard Health Review, a small study was done. So for 27 minutes a day for 8 months, 8 weeks. So for 8 weeks, 27 minutes a day, they had a group of folks meditate. They did an MRI on them before and after. What they saw, meditating every day for 8 weeks for 27 minutes, they saw a decrease in the size of the amygdala, which we just saw. So your amygdala is fear, anxiety, stress, and threat. The amygdala shrinked, and the hippocampus grew larger. And when I say larger, I'm saying denser. So the amygdala was less dense, and the hippocampus had denser cells. So these structures, the hippocampus, are connected with self-compassion and memory and self-control. And so folks literally by meditating actually change their brain structure. So if we have been trained by family, by life, to always have a reaction of a high emotion reaction to stress, meditation helps us and trains our brain to have a calm reaction to stress. So meditate. So I want you also, so for conscientious spending, so here's another way to look at it. If we're spending and we love our spending, right? So let's put a twist on it. Like maybe we're spending for charities, maybe we're spending for socially responsible causes, right? Maybe we're going to like a resale store, right? We're going to that resale store means that when I'm buying something from a resale store like Brown Elephant or Salvation Army, I'm helping someone. So we can do a tweak to our spending where we're still out there, we're still spending, but we're doing it consciously. Also, by going to a resale store, we're also spending less money. So that's a very budget friendly tool to use. I want you to also find pleasure in savings, right? Like we're finding pleasure in spending. So let's reverse that. Let's find pleasure in saving. And a part of that pleasure in saving is that you see that balance go up, right? Just seeing that balance go up, especially over weeks, over months, what have you, you're going to start to get the same, the pleasure center of your brain is going to start firing for savings as it does for shopping. So let's reverse that. And you can do that by like setting personal meaningful goals. So if you set like a meaningful financial goal, that is going to overshadow your spending to the point where for you to spend something, you're going to think to yourself, but if I buy this, that means I don't get to save for this. And by doing that twist, you make yourself, your financial health, a top priority. So what I want to say is give to yourself, right? When you're feeling stressed or you're feeling out of control, savings is a form of control and you're giving back to yourself, especially if you have some meaningful financial goal. So let's reverse this and look at it differently. So finally, because we have there's so many counterproductive habits out there, we've talked about things that you can do to help yourself, but I also want you to recognize that it is truly acceptable and okay to seek professional guidance if you need it, regardless of what it is that you're indulging in. If you feel like you need somebody that's going to guide you through this process or guide you through this storm, then by all means seek that person out. We have, we have those services for students and we have those services for staff. So in summary, we are managing various levels of trauma and stress, which can lead to counterproductive acts of self-medication. So consequently, introducing more problems and more stress. So recovery is recognizing that the bad behavior for what it is, right? And swapping a new behavior for an old behavior, a productive habit for that counterproductive habit. So we're kicking out these old habits and we're adopting new ones. And one of the things that I've shared with Andrea that she's going to drop in is we have a self-compassion mini mag. It's something that the Wellness Center produces. This mini mag on self-compassion is the very next step that you'll need to looking towards feeling better about yourself and finding healthy solutions. And so I want you, please, if you don't mind, click on that, look at that, and start on your path. And at this point, so what is our next slide? So I'll let Andrea talk about this one.
And we're going to have Suhas find the wellness link. I think we shared it earlier in the chat as well that Carol was just talking about. But this is the last webinar in the 2023-2024 Get Savvy, Grow Your Green Stuff webinar series. All of the recorded webinars for this year and any ones that we covered on different topics in previous years are available on our YouTube channel, which you can visit at go.uillinois.edu/getsavvy. Or you can search for IL Student Money on YouTube. You can also stay in contact with us and all the collaborators in a wide variety of ways. I know that we ran a little bit over today. If you need to hop off, feel free to do so. But we're also going to stick around to answer any questions that anyone might have. So we talked a lot today about stress management, how stress impacts finances, some of the things that people mentioned in the chat that we have resources on regarding shopping, specific aspects of financial planning or emergency spending or how to save money on food. We also shared those resources in the chat as well. And we'll also be converting this recording into a self-guided course over the next couple months. So we will get you access to that as well. So for my colleagues that were monitoring the chat, Steve and Suhas, was there any questions that came in that Carol wasn't able to address or I wasn't able to address during our presentation? All right, Steve says no. Suhas says no. If you do think of any questions later or you ponder on stuff over the next week and you want some additional feedback, you can go ahead and email studentmoney@uillinois.edu. That's who provided the login instructions earlier today as well as yesterday. And you can let us know what your question is and we'll do our best to answer your question or get you resources to help you answer your own question. So thank you again for joining us. Please, again, feel free to hop off. We're not going to stick around too much longer since nobody had any questions, but we're so glad that you were able to join us today. And I'm especially thankful that Carol was able to do all the heavy lifting. I didn't really have to do much for this beautiful webinar.
Happy to do it. It was fun.
I really appreciate all of your guidance and insightful information on stress. The psychology nerd in me was just happy the whole time. All right. Thank you all for joining us. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.